with apologies for absence.
Chairman, we have apologies from Councillor Richard Lewis.
Thank you. Are there any declarations of interest in matters before this meeting? Thank you. In which case, can we approve the minutes of the last Cabinet meeting shown on pages 1 to 10?
Agreed.
Thank you. And as usual, to confirm that the items of business marked Part 1 will be considered in public, and those items marked Part 2 in private. The Cabinet reports that are public reports are agenda items 5 to 9, and the private reports 10 to 11, and there is an additional recommendation for Cabinet Report 9. First item tonight, agenda item 5, page 11 of the agenda, Heathrow expansion and air quality government consultations. And we also have a very weighty appendix which shows the 4 consultations that are referred to in the recommendations. And could I start by thanking the officers, both our environmental officers and our legal officers, for the amount of work that has gone into these submissions. As you will see from the recommendations, they are on a number of issues, the draft airports national policy statement and the UK airspace policy and tackling nitrogen dioxide, and are a combination of either an individual response from us as a borough or a joint response with the London boroughs of Richmond, Wandsworth and the Royal Borough of Windsor and Maidenhead. And as I say, they are very detailed. They are set out in the appendix. But if I could refer Cabinet to paragraph 29, this is referring specifically to the national policy statement, but I think it shows you, it gives an indication of where we are coming from with our submission. The key issues outlined in the response are summarised as follows. The government should not have reneged on previous promises made that there would be no Heathrow expansion. The government's approach to the very important issue of air quality is palpably wrong in both fact and law. The consultation is flawed on the basis that it does not provide essential information on a number of important matters, such as flight paths. Now, how can you consult on something which is a new runway and not tell the people who are going to be flown over that they're going to be overflown? The new air quality plan, updated passenger demand forecasts, the financial reports and information referred to in the draft airports MPS, full and proper information about alternatives and in particular Gatwick, an assessment of mitigation, a health impact assessment. The consultation is unfair on the basis that ministers have indicated that they've made their minds up already. The consultation document, including the promotional literature, has been presented in a biased way. Consultees were not given a comparative assessment of the shortlisted schemes, nor adequate reasoning for the government's choice of Heathrow. The government plan has refused to give consultees extra time to consider the new draft air quality plan. No regard for or consideration has been given to the problems associated with the calling of the general election during the consultation period. That's quite interesting because most other government business was shelved. This one was allowed to go on. There is no evidence for rejecting Gatwick because the government's case on economics is flawed. The government's assessments on the benefits of Heathrow expansion is flawed, including the adoption of a business case which ignores the advice of the Climate Change Committee. There is inadequate and unlawful assessment under the Habitats Directive. The principles or requirements in the draft airports MPS are ineffective to secure an airport that would operate and be operable within the necessary environmental limits. The appraisal of sustainability does not conform with the requirements of both primary and secondary legislation. Expansion of Heathrow is inconsistent with the principle of sustainable development. Any perceived economic benefits are unproven, and the environmental damage will occur is overwhelming. Apart from that, it's terrific. In 2010, and many of you have heard this before, I was in the High Court when the Gordon Brown government were trying to expand Heathrow to have the High Court reject it, and the judge at the time referred to the move to build a third runway as untenable in both law and common sense. Which, as Councillor Riley will tell you, is a bit of a first, because sometimes you can get something which is legal and barking mad, and sometimes it's the other way around. To be both illegal and barking mad takes some doing, and I have to tell you that the current proposal is even worse than the one that was turned down in 2010. So, Back to the recommendations. The first 5 are talking about us endorsing the responses that we have given, as I said, shown in the appendices. And the 6th is affirming the Council's commitment, working either alone or in conjunction with partners, to take all necessary action and further legal challenges as required to defeat this proposal to expand Heathrow. Are there any comments? Councillor Simmons.
Thank you, Leader. I'm sure we all absolutely endorse everything that's contained in here about Heathrow. I think one of the things that is touched on but doesn't come across all that strongly, I think, and this is something emerging recently, is the campaign about Northolt that I think we've all heard a good deal about. So it's clear our residents are being lied to about the potential things that might happen at the RAF base there. And it seems to be very much tied up with the impact that the expansion of Heathrow would have, that there are clearly people who would benefit hugely if Northolt were to close, because it would smooth the path to a much, much larger Heathrow airport. And I think it's important that we as a council show both our support for the Royal Air Force and the different organisations within it that are based there, but also make sure that our residents have full and accurate information when making decisions on that. And whilst that's not something strictly about the campaign against Heathrow, it is relevant to our response to aviation in the borough.
Yes, I think I do intend to deal with that issue on another occasion. It's quite clear that this is promoted by the supporters of the Back Heathrow campaign, who are also having some opinion poll people ring up now and say, should the local authority be spending money now the decision has been made? Well, the decision hasn't been made. A few politicians will say, yes, we've made it. No, they haven't. They cannot break the law. Heathrow may have some owners who have different views on the legal approach from what we have in the UK, but we have quite a logical approach to this, and we will give a commitment tonight that however long it takes, as we said before, we continue to defend our people and our environment. And we will defeat this round. And that is all this is. This is one round. We'll bring this one down and they will come back again. Common sense will say, let's get on and build Gatwick now, and hopefully common sense will prevail. But with that, are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 6, page 25. This is the Children, Young People and Learning Policy Overview Committee, major review of the Council's current and future relationship with academies and free schools. Councillor Simmons.
Well, thank you, Leader. Clearly when residents, perhaps put up to it by some of the people you've just referred to, say, well, why is the Council spending money opposing expansion at Heathrow? Couldn't you spend it on our schools? We need to consider the number of schools that would either become unusable or have to close, be demolished as a consequence of the proposal. I think residents would rightly expect, in possession of those facts, us to defend them. But this is a review which it's been my pleasure to attend and contribute to at the outset, which Councillor Palmer has led, about the relationship between the Council and its schools. It's something which has changed a lot over the years. The introduction of local management in schools in the 1980s made schools more independent. The introduction of grant maintained status made them more independent still. And the coalition government's drive for academisation from 2010 brought about a fundamental and wholesale change in that. So this is a really good opportunity for us to allow our colleagues to bring in a wide variety of stakeholders and to feedback on their views about the way forward for the future. So, Councillor Palmer, perhaps you'd like to share your views with us in introducing the report, and then the Cabinet will respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Simmons. Good evening, everybody. I'm pleased to present the Cabinet the Children, Young People and Learning Policy Overview Committee's review into the Council's current and future relationship with academies and free schools. In light of much national change to the educational landscape in recent years, which is still ongoing, Cabinet will be aware of the different and distinct school types now operating within the borough today. Free schools, academies and maintained schools vary in the way that they are set up in terms of their curriculum, governance and the responsible authorities to whom they are accountable. The local authority's role has reduced and changed as a result. It was within this context that the committee decided to explore the Council's relationship with them since they have taken on forms of independence from the local authority. The committee welcomed the proactive work undertaken to progress educational outcomes across all schools, including the establishment of the School Strategic Board and the development of the School Improvement Framework, which builds on the vision that every child within the borough deserves the best possible education. The committee heard evidence from the Cabinet Member for Education and Children's Services and a range of local school professionals, along with 2 well-responded surveys of head teachers, which showed that the vast majority of free schools and academies considered themselves to have a positive, ongoing relationship with the council. Maintained schools also gave their view on what a future relationship with the council could look like should they at some point decide to convert to academy status. The feedback gained from this review will provide members and officers with some valuable insight for any future transformation of education service provision locally. In concluding the review, the committee made some practical and supportive recommendations that fit neatly into the way the council's role in schools are changing. These were focused around strengthened school-to-council communications, building on the good relationship with the Regional Schools Commissioner, ensuring clear and accountable plans in place for school improvement, reviewing induction and training for school governors, and continuing assistance to any schools with the conversion to academy status. Finally, I would like to put on record my thanks to the witnesses that supported this review, along with council officers. Their contribution was invaluable. Subject to this review being approved by Cabinet, I have asked that a copy of the major review report should be sent to all the head teachers who took part in the head teacher surveys. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to comment, Councillor?
Well, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Palmer, for presenting the report to Cabinet tonight. And I know we will all commit quite happily to sharing the outcome of this report. And a number of these recommendations we've already started to implement, knowing that your committee had considered them. So, for example, the part at recommendation 6 about revising the school improvement framework. In the light of the changed role of the local authority, that work is underway at the moment in the light of the advice that you and your colleagues have provided. And I know that, for example, recommendation 2 about further ways to build on the good relationship with the Regional Schools Commissioner, again, some work is underway, focused around some specific schools where we have some concerns, but based upon lessons that we've learned in the past about how we could make that relationship more effective. So on behalf of Cabinet, may I ask you to take our thanks back to your colleagues and the officers that supported you. This is a really good, very comprehensive piece of work, and it is absolutely fit for purpose in looking at how we as a Cabinet and we as an administration take our relationship with schools forward.
Any further comments? If not, could I have my thanks to those of Councillor Simmons. It is a very good report. It is very comprehensive, and it doesn't pass a weight test but gets the message over. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are the recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Agenda item 7, page 53, Dynamic Purchasing System for Homecare and Outreach Services. Councillor Cawthorne.
Thank you, Leader. I move the report that's before us, seeking Cabinet approval to establish a dynamic purchasing system in conjunction with the CCG for home care and outreach care packages. Now, we are all, of course, familiar with the challenges associated with home care in Hillingdon and beyond. That's very well documented. And a dynamic purchasing system will help us provide, or will give us an additional means through which to manage some of those challenges, and I think that is important. I will just explain that the proposed system is dynamic in the sense that new providers are able to join. It's not a static framework, which is important as it allows providers, where there are some performance issues, to have their market share challenged, if you like, by others entering the DPS. And at the moment, we do spend considerable officer resource supporting poorly performing providers, which is very resource intensive. And we do need to move forward from that. It will drive up quality by establishing a series of entry criteria which providers must pass in order to join and be considered for spot purchased care packages. The other thing I would say is that the call-off criteria includes external ratings of Ofsted and CQC, and internal data from the Council's quality assurance team. So I look at this positively in terms of taking forward this area of service which has presented some challenges for us in the past, and with that I will move the report and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cawthorne. Are there any comments? If not, are those recommendations agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. Agenda item 8, page 61, planning obligations, the quarterly financial monitoring report. Councillor Burrows.
Thank you, Leader. This is the usual report that we get before us at Cabinet, showing the 106 and 278 agreements that have been agreed since our last report by officers within the Council, which go to protect our residents from development. But by the figures that are coming in, you will see that we are getting developers want to work within Hillingdon and work with Hillingdon to produce high quality actual developments that we are happy with, our residents are happy with, and obviously we get the money. You'll see we've got 10.5 million relating to 106 and 278 agreements, and in Q4 we received additional income of 203k, and we spent 3.1 million. Now, officers do look at spending this money as quick as we can. Some of it can be very time consuming, trying to get the agreements in place, trying to get the right avenue for the legal agreement, and obviously in the right area to where the development is. So I will yet again give the usual warning that I do to my Cabinet colleagues within your portfolio areas. If there are any amounts that you think have been hanging around for a while, please ask officers or myself, because I meet with them on a regular basis and do challenge them to spend this money, and also do challenge them when they're not being able to spend the money to go back to the developer to see if we can use it through a deed of variation somewhere else. So, as I say, education is generally our highest earner from 106 278 agreements, but if there is anything you think has been hanging around a bit too long and there doesn't seem to be enough detail for you to see, well, why is that the case, please challenge officers and include me on any emails you do, because then I can take it up at those meetings. But with that, I just move the recommendation that we note this, and as usual, we continue to get money and good quality developments through Hillingdon for our residents. Thank you.
Is that recommendation agreed?
Agreed.
Agenda item 9, page 103. This is the council budget, the 16-17 revenue and council budget outturn, effectively our year-end accounts summary. Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Leader. Well, as you just said, it is the year-end. Throughout the year we hear a monthly update, and this finally is the update for the whole year, ending at the end of March this year. And it is, unsurprisingly, a good news story, and there are many figures to which I can point you, and I suppose the first and most important one I should point everyone to is that the underspend this year was just short of £4 million, which is no mean feat, and officers are to be congratulated on arriving at that level of underspend without compromising the other things that we continue to do. I will start, actually, before I go any further, I will move the recommendations, which are shown on the bottom of page 103 and the top part of page 104, items 1 to 9, along with a new recommendation on the addendum sheet, recommendation 10, about which I know you'll speak after me, Leader. So going forward, I think on page 106 there's some very interesting facts that are worth bearing in mind, particularly paragraph 11, which shows that during the year we managed to achieve the savings of 13.3 million. So we did this as well as achieving an underspend, which is no mean thing. And particularly in paragraph 12, which shows that general fund balances carried forward are over 39 million, which is a terrific achievement and something we should all be proud of, and puts us in a very good financial place going forward. The other area I think is probably worth noting is on page 111 in respect of the capital programme, where you'll see there's an underspend of just over 25 million, of which virtually 16 was slippage, so will be expended later, and about 9 was underspend. So that, again, puts us in a good position going forward. And at the bottom there, I think the benefit of that was the reduction in the council's projected borrowing by virtue of these receipts, and that the effect that had in saving us in excess of £400,000 worth of debt repayment and interest. So that in itself is a further good news story. The recommendations are, as I've shown on page, as I've mentioned. I move them and leave you to talk further on items that you choose. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. As you say, an extremely good position to come in 4 million under budget and carry forward nearly 39 million in 3 balances. It's a very sound position. And the first of the recommendations is asking us to note that, but also to release the development and risk contingency and priority growth funds that we put aside at the beginning of the year, and they're outlined in tables 4 and 5. Note the Treasury Management Update. It's Appendix E, which is on page 140. Probably worth looking at that, but as it's the year end, there are a couple of points worth looking at. And you alluded to this as well, Councillor Bianco. Paragraph 162. During the year, the Council utilised internal balances and no new borrowing was taken to fund capital expenditure. So if you look at paragraph 167 on the next page, by using internal resources in lieu of borrowing, loan interest costs for the year totaled 9.3 million, avoiding additional interest costs of approximately £4.5 million. So by using our own funds, we have saved £4.5 million worth of interest that we would have incurred otherwise. In addition to that, we had debt maturing in the year of 7.28 million, and we also paid off £40 million of HRA debt in the year as well. So that adds to your good news story, Councillor Bianco. Paragraph 3 is the usual note of the delegated authority to myself and the Chief Executive to sign off assignments over 50k, and they are detailed in Appendix F on page 145. Recommendation 4 approves the rephasing of 13.5 million of HRA capital budgets. These are shown at table 19 on page 132. And also, I think if we look at page 130, paragraph 121, as we're referring to the housing revenue account. Now, housing revenue account general balance is £45,826,000. So we have balances of 45 million, nearly 46 million in our HRA, on top of which we have a major repairs reserve, and I'll come back to this in a minute, of over £23 million. So we have a very strong HRA as well as a general fund. We approved the refund phasing of the general fund capital budgets, as mentioned by Councillor Bianco on table 20, page 135. We just looked at that. Approves environment of 660k inspiring shopfronts funding to the Gateway Hillingdon programme to support a new gateway initiative at Eastcote Town Centre. Approves the proposed amendments to the Council's local council tax reduction scheme effective from the 1st of April 2018 for public consultation to align the scheme with recent changes to housing benefit regulations. That's referred to in paragraph 5. Approves acceptance of gift funding, and this happens to be recent gift funding in relation to planning performance agreements on major developments within the borough. In respect of application, Comag site, West Drayton, up to £23,500. And recommendation 9 is to ratify the decisions taken by myself and relevant Cabinet members, which are ordinarily reserved to the Cabinet. There are 3 decisions set out in Appendix H. One of them is about car parking for non-residents at Ruislip Lido, and subsequent to this decision there was a slight alteration to the charges that were going to be charged or are now being charged at at the Lido, very small change. Now, the new recommendation 10, you'll all be aware of the Grenfell Tower fire and the catastrophic loss of life in that incident. If you look at the supporting information to this recommendation, you will see that we have regular inspections of our tower blocks, and when they were inspected in May, there were recommendations. It's about 390 k's worth of emergency lights we have 11 tower blocks in some of those blocks, and also a recommendation that we looked at replacing fire doors with a better class of fire door, which is now available. One block is currently having the fire doors fitted. We have tenders in for 3 more, and using the information gleaned from those tenders, I have this week used emergency powers to order a total of £2.2 million worth of fire doors, which has been accepted. So, as I'm sure other councils now will be over the coming months doing these assessments and ordering fire doors, I just wanted to make sure that we were ahead of the queue, and ours would be in and being fitted when the others were getting round to doing it. And that's not being disparaging, it just happens to be fortunate that our inspection came in May and we had the information and we can act straight away to do it. Now, this goes on to say that there may well be further things that have to be taken as we learn more from the Grenfell Tower fire incident. This is not about apportioning blame. You will see in the media over the coming days and weeks individual councils, I think it's Haringey and Camden, who are having the finger pointed at them today. There will be others, and we will have to come to a decision on what further work needs to be done once we have the official report from the fire service, which I hope will come. There's going to be an interim report and then a final report. But for the moment, we are doing whatever the fire brigade asks us to do, and we're doing it as fast as we possibly can. We will communicate with our all occupiers. Bear in mind that they're not all tenants of the council. Some of these have been purchased, but we will communicate next week with all of those occupiers of properties in our tower blocks. I was waiting to get confirmation. We have visual confirmation that we don't have any of the cladding that was used on the Grenfell Tower fire. We're pretty certain we haven't, but we want an official report on that so we can confirm to our tenants and leaseholders that that is the case. We will also inform them that this fire door work will be done, plus any further work that is required if legislation is changed or government direction is that we do that. We do have the funds to do it, and I'm sure those that haven't got the funds will borrow if they have to. But that is the purpose of bringing this recommendation, is actually noting a decision that I've already made regarding the fire doors and pointing out that there may well be other decisions that have to be made, and if that's the case, they will be made urgently and reported to Cabinet as soon as possible. And I will give an update to Council when we meet in 10 days or so time. Now, it's a pity that we have to add that recommendation at the end of your good news story to Councillor Bianco. It doesn't detract from the fact that it has been a very good year financially, again, for the London Borough of Hillingdon. And I would add my thanks to the Finance Director and his staff for delivering the budget. Once again, under budget expenditure, sound position to carry forward. Are the recommendations 1 to 10 agreed? Thank you.